We have some time for questions of our distinguished panelists. There's a microphone right there in the middle of the aisle. So if you want to step up to the mic, please identify yourself and identify the person to whom you'd like to direct the question. You may direct it to more than one if you choose. But, and please put your long, convoluted, heartfelt statement in the form of a question.
That's very intimidating. Are we on?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
That was very intimidating. Thank you very much. This question is for Wolfgang. I was very curious in terms of balancing energy. I know that Germany buys electricity from Poland. They're restarting some coal-fired plants, but your wind that's a lot, 60 gigawatts of wind. How in the world do you guys balance that with your daily load going up and down?
Is it on, or do you have to press somewhere? Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so yes, Europe, obviously we have a grid, we are connected, and this erratic power generation through wind and solar is causing, of course, the issue sometimes, not always, but often enough, that we have too much electricity. And you know that you have to use electricity the moment you generate it, otherwise you destabilize the grid. And destabilizing the grid, actually, if you don't do anything, you get the famous blackout. So we don't want to have blackouts, so we dump the electricity, so we export it to neighboring countries. There are countries who are almost specialized in it, the Austrians, and because they buy, we pay, we have negative prices then for this energy, and when we have peak demand, then we buy it back. And I don't want to make too much fun of it because it's normal in business that there are moments where you have something in excess, but the thing is that so-called green energy has a priority and the utilities have to buy it. So it's basically you produce no matter what how much as you can, as much as you can, of course, and then you, as a wind farmer, you get the money, and then the utility can see, okay, how can we get rid of the electricity? Okay, then they are smart and say, okay, no, we pay you directly to switch off your wind farm today at this hour and so on. And okay, and then there are the other moments when actually we need power, and like in February, where actually we are desperately also looking, okay, who can provide us with power? And the last sentence to this answer is, in the past, it was like the typical situation, in the, let's say, old days, that France, which relies heavily on electricity to heat homes, uses about in February a lot of electricity from Germany because their nuclear power plants can't run at full capacity in winter because many of the rivers don't have enough water. So they usually kind of traditionally got it from us. So this, of course, won't be possible anymore in the future. So there we see a drama coming.
Yes, this question is also for Wolfgang. I'm curious, a couple questions. During this green transition, how has the average consumer's energy bill at home changed? And were the changes advertised ahead of time to the German people? Did they know what was coming?
I love this question, really, I do, because in the very early days, when it was talked about that we need an energy transition, a very senior politician from the Green Party said it won't cost more per household than one scoop of ice cream. I would say, be generous by today's prices, let's say $2 a month extra, which is of course not the case. It's significantly more expensive. We pay in US cents 36 cents per kilowatt hour for private users. This is 50% more than what you pay in California or in New York, but you have to know that in New York the income is significantly higher for most people. And so it really means nobody told us the truth about it, and it's like any public works project, they never tell you the truth, and it's going on to become more expensive, but because the political elite realized this, and now we do the famous game in the future from the left pocket into the right pocket, with some commission, and in order to, let's say, cover up the rising costs, because it will become more expensive, period.
Hey, Tim, bringing that home to the United States, basically the Green New Deal, it's free, right, according to Joe Biden? So there's no cost at all? How does that work?
What do you mean there's no cost? I mean,
Well, he said that
you could just print the money.
$3.5
it's all
trillion
good.
pays for itself.
There's the cost of paper, the money's printed on. I mean, that's the cost of it. I think that when you look at AOC, or when you look at Chuck Schumer, or when you look at Nancy Pelosi selling these things, there's always a glint in their eye, because that was always how my dad could tell that I was lying. I'm very familiar with that. If Dad's watching right now, I'm telling the truth right now, Dad. And I think that that is a very huge thing that we need to do more of, is hold them accountable for what they're doing, which is lying to us. It's lying to us. This isn't a net gain in jobs. This is a net loss in jobs. This isn't going to be free. This is going to cost us in every way imaginable that we could ever comprehend. Set aside the fact that it's Marxist, straight up Marxism, disguising behind the Green New Deal. The cost is extremely immense. We all know that. But from a messaging perspective, from someone who goes around and sees the impact on it, as we discussed, this is state policy, a lot of it that I was talking about. Imagine that coming from the federal government. It's devastating.
I think you just answered my question. Because when you give the example about the slogan, it was really just a euphemism for a lie, right? I mean, basically the research was done, but was that real research, the example you were giving? Are we supposed to believe that that was real research put into that slogan?
Yeah. Well, I guess it all depends. I mean, first of all, a political slogan is exactly what that is. It's politics. It serves the purpose of the moment. So you have to be able to see that and wonder, why is it 30%? Why isn't it 40%? Why isn't it 50%? Why aren't we doing 100% by 2030? That would sound really, really good. Well, it's probably because it's poll tested, I would guess.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot that. They probably hired a polling company too, and they probably paid them $500,000 to figure out the right words to say. Okay. That's what we're dealing with here. You guys have any? Yeah.
It's easier to remember one number than two.
I'm from Texas, by the way, and I was not affected by the freeze, so, regular energy, yay, that we share with Louisiana, so that was great. Yes, East Texas.
My question is for Oliver, and I wish I'd have known he was an expert in hydrogen. While I was sitting at his table, I would have grilled him then. But we're from New Mexico, and our New Mexico governor, Lujan Grisham, is just last week or 10 days made the big announcement that she's going to have New Mexico be the biggest hub of hydrogen. And it's really, as you pointed out, it's expensive. But also the Biden administration has also announced that they're going to give, billions of dollars to open about 6 new hydrogen hubs around the country. And I'm just wondering, how successful do you think our New Mexico governor will be on this?
Okay, so hydrogen is a technology that is usable. Like solar PV and wind energy, it's going to be expensive. So that's really the main distinguishing factor to other energy sources or fuels. Now, hydrogen also has the issue of storage and safe handling. And if you have cars, you need to worry about how you refuel cars with hydrogen. There's a lot of aspects that make dealing with hydrogen a lot more dangerous and therefore much more expensive to solve those technical problems, right? That's kind of what the research was about that we looked into, is the storage, the production, storage, and handling of hydrogen. Now, it can be done. It's not that it's impossible. You can use just pressure tanks. You can just use have pressurized hydrogen. We had a PV-powered hydrogen production facility here in Las Vegas on the water district. They power their cars there with hydrogen. So it's all possible. It's not that it's not. It is just, I think, when you scale it up and want to distribute it widely, it's going to be very expensive. That's the biggest downside, right?
So even with government Biden money, can this be successful since the government's going to put in?
Yeah, when you have $4 trillion to spend, you're right, you can make anything successful, right? I mean, it's kind of, it's just a matter of money in the end. It's not, the whole idea is here to kind of find a solution that is economical and sustainable, right? Not just possible, right? So there's different qualifiers, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Schulte from Cincinnati. Question for Dr. Hemmer. First, a comment. A little over 10 years ago, the Cincinnati Zoo installed solar panels on top of their parking garage. And at the time, it was told it was one of the largest such projects, either in the United States or the world. In the paper, it gave the cost of the project so many $1 million. Then it said, well, here's how much the zoo is going to save each year. Being an engineer, I did a little quick calculation in the back of the envelope, and I said, oh, payback of over 50 years, which is probably twice the life of the panels. The other day, my wife and I were driving north on I-15 to go up into Utah to see some of the national parks. And I noticed was there one or two different huge solar panel parks up there. Was that what you were alluding to and during your talk, number one? And number two, is there information you can give us? Are those panels, are those parks really sustainable in terms of economics and what have you? Or are they proven what I think is solar panel is, again, way too expensive to be sustainable?
Well, you have to look at the entire cycle of those solar panels. First, you have to make them, then their operation, and then you have to dispose of them. Every step has a cost that you need to take into account. You cannot privatize the profits and socialize the expenses, right? That's kind of really what in a lot of cases you're facing. That in Germany, there was this one example. They had rooftop solar on a public government facility, and they had a big display in the waiting room where people could see how much power was generated by that solar panel. And when you calculate it, it's enough power to power the display. So you know, it's not quite honest, right? And that, but the point is, it goes further because the toxic materials, cadmium, lead, and others that can easily leach out in the environment when you just dump it in a field, you actually do need to recycle those materials, right? And that's expensive. And so that is a cost that is really not always taken into account for those solar panels. And there is no back-end solution. There's no requirement for the manufacturer to take those panels back and recycle them, right? You would have to close the entire cycle of those solar panels. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted actually to add something quite interesting. We talked about solar panels, but there are these famous wind farms. And the wind farms are profitable for the investors. No, not the people who sell it in particular. And for the investors, to some extent, they're profitable, but that's not my point. But after a while, when the guaranteed feed-in price, when government, or when the grid basically took your electricity, whether they needed it or not, but there is a period after which you don't get this guaranteed feed-in tariff anymore paid. So you have to look how you sell your electricity. And this means for many of these wind farms, okay, we stop operation. And there is no way how to recycle them. So for the time being, we dump, then the parts and the basement, the base in the ground, which is giant, we just leave it in the fields. And which is, of course, according to the book, is illegal. They're supposed to be taken out, but nobody takes it out. And so for the time being, it's also another thing. There will be a solution in the future, but for the time being, nobody. And it's a typical case of like, okay, I don't care what happens afterwards. But there's one thing I actually have to add with the solar thing. And it goes also what Tim said. He jokingly, but actually in a serious manner, said, okay, we just print the money. And this is why I didn't mention how many billions the energy transition costs, because these days it's really just, let's just print the money. And when we have now in Germany electricity price of 36 cents per kilowatt hour, then even expensive solar panels, which become cheap thanks to Chinese dumped solar panels, now it pays. It just makes the electricity so expensive that finally it's profitable to have a solar panel to ease the burden.
I also wanted to point out, so that was in Cincinnati. I used to work in a certain administration in Ohio in the governor's office, and the big fight was over solar tax credits, because a few hours north on I-75, there's a plant called First Solar in Toledo, Ohio, and it is ground zero for handouts. It's not surprising at all that they built a massive project in a place that's not going to recoup the expense, because it doesn't matter. It's taxpayers' expense, and of course there's federal funding involved in that. Again, this is all characteristic of a system that is completely rigged against the taxpayer and for just a few people a few hours north in Toledo, keeping them in business.
Question.
Yes. My name is Bob Bauman. Oliver, thank you for your kind comments. I have a question, though, for Wolfgang, having to do with, and you may have partially answered it, having to do with feed-in tariffs, and that there was an early program to get people to build wind farms and to take all their precious farmland and the roofs of their barns and put solar panels on them. What is the status of that program, and how, because it was hurting Germany for a long time, because as you said, they were forced to buy all the energy that was produced. What is the status of that program, and where is it going? Is it still very debilitating? If you could comment, please.
Yes. I partly answered it. So these guaranteed feed-in tariffs, they're limited. And the wind farm, the lobby of the wind farm industry, they very much hope that these feed-in tariffs, these guaranteed feed-in tariffs, will be extended, which is not necessarily the case. And same actually for solar. So the first solar installations were really very expensive. The typical case of an early adopter. Every early adopter knows that you have to pay a significantly higher price. So after the period was so long that it was definitely profitable. They got on average 7% return of investment about. And later then people got even tax issues because they didn't realize, suddenly I'm an entrepreneur, and so I have to pay VAT and all that stuff. But back to the point, as I said, electricity in Germany, it became so expensive that it's profitable, the big supermarkets, to cover their roof with solar, because they have the peak demand during the day for the cooling and the light. And actually, as I said, Chinese dump their stuff subsidized with forced labor, probably to some extent. That's actually why we don't have significant introduction of solar panels in Europe. We buy them from China mainly, and they're actually so cheap that that it's actually again profitable because the prices are sky high and they keep on rising. And now some preppers also believe now in solar panels.
Can I add something to that? Yeah, I just want to add you a little bit of a perspective here. A friend of mine installed rooftop solar on his house in Germany years ago, and I asked him how much is it enough to cover his power needs for the house. He said, I don't use it. I just sell it. I buy the cheaper power from the grid and sell my expensive solar to the power companies. And the interesting thing is that thinking in Germany caused one of the biggest wealth transfers in history between the people who live in rental apartments and the people who have houses, or the farmers who don't grow crops anymore, they put solar panels up, and they feed the expensive power into the grid, and the people who cannot do that effectively have to pay for that, the ratepayers, right? This is in the billions. Tens of billions of dollars go from the poor people who live in small apartments to the ones who have rooftop solar, to the ones who have agricultural areas that they can use for solar production and so on.
Question.
Thank you. State Representative Mary Dye from Washington State. And a couple of observations. One is that fundamentally our nation was built on innovation. In the last 100 years, certainly, we have been huge beneficiaries of this extraordinary culture of innovation. And of course, Germany has been right alongside of us, you know, in spurring competition in intellectual properties and the way you develop as well. And so, you know, that has been fundamental. But as a legislator, I noticed that we like to run to the newest shiny object because it's politically advantageous to us to champion new technologies. And so the temptation is to build policy around those technologies. 3 examples that we've heard today where we hyper-subsidize something, the hydrogen, and you know, there's hydrogen electrolysis generators in Utah that policy is implementing to incentivize. We have hydrogen electrolysis in a mid-sized commuter aircraft so that it flies on water. And those are very exciting for legislators to try and build policy around to take advantage of the street creds that we obtain from that. And I just would like to ask if there's any way, as a conservative who loves innovation and science, I can craft policy that doesn't do this incestuous type of bill, right? That creates exactly the type of disgusting things that you've expressed here today. How do I say that let's free up the innovative space so that some of these things can be successful without the subsidy? I see companies that take the subsidy, take that revenue and put it into their normal income statement as revenue, and then try to capture a return on investment on the public money instead of looking at the common good. I mean, these relationships are so disgusting to me, they make me upset to my stomach. So what kind of policy language can you provide us as writers that want to incent new innovation in the free market and overcome this preponderance of public spending?
I'll give it a first step just as an overall concept. What you as a legislature want to accomplish is to lower energy cost in general. You don't want to start with technologies that might sound good but would increase the prices. Low energy costs guarantee prosperity. That's it, effectively. And on that you can build everything else, right?
And I should let you know that our government relations director for the Heartland Institute is in this room, and he's going to talk with you further about some of the information that we can give you to help you write good legislation. Thank you for asking.
Can I just add one more thing? And
Yes.
this is just perspective. Be front of mind for when you do handle this stuff. And your own situation is your own situation. But I think if you change that perspective, it isn't on you to innovate. It's on the business. It's on the individual to innovate. And as long as that person is free to do that, that's where the magic is. Actually, it's not magic. It's just who we are as people. So just front of mind as you think about it.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, and we have one more questioner.
I'm Ron Cabot from Carmel, California. All right. It's my understanding that Germany has just had its elections within this last month and a half. Prior to the elections, Angela Merkel went outside of the EU and contracted with Putin, the Russians, to supply gas to Germany. Do you believe now that Angela Merkel's basically phasing herself out of politics, that she's placed Germany at risk relative to that transaction?
I got this question over the last 2 days kind of a few times, and a bit looking back at history. I mean, having grown up, during the time in the 70s, when we got these pipelines and we made this contract with the Soviet Union, there were somebody like Brezhnev in power, not really such a nice guy, I would say. And to this day, with the Russian Federation, with Putin in place, never in this time, ever, anybody from Moscow indicated or hinted that they will use gas as a leverage for anything against us. I'm not talking about Ukraine, but the Ukraine-Russia relationship is a completely different story. And it's like thinking about what other families do. It's a different issue. Point I want to make, we are dependent on Russian, formerly Soviet, gas supplies. This is true. But for the time being, it never appeared to be risky. At the very beginning, we didn't know. Now we know it is a reliable source. And this is actually one thing. And the other side, what to do. I mean, the prices for LNG from whether it's from the United States or from the Arabian area, it's so high. I mean, liquefaction, transport, gasification, the terminals, it costs so much, significantly much more than what we still pay for the other European suppliers. And just one thing about talking about gas, hydrogen, because it was not asked, but I find it funny, when we here the next showcase with the politician, the model hydrogen car and so on. 96% of the hydrogen that is used in the Earth is basically produced using fossil fuels, mainly methane. I mean, you know this, but not everybody knows it. But this is a joke, that you have just 4% of the hydrogen that is in use in this whatever great so-and-so car. It's basically with an enormous amount of money and resources invested, created synthetically. I mean, just to keep this in perspective, where we are, where we still have to go. And there's one thing which kind of, when people ask about this, some people just want something. The green movement in Germany just want wind and solar. They just love the idea. So it's not about a rational idea. It's like about your feeling, what you think is right. The facts don't matter for most people.
Thank you very much. That concludes our panel here. We have another couple of panels coming up at 11 a.m. Thank you so much to our presenters. They were fantastic.